brothers and sisters, on this beautiful first Saturday. Just before I get into what I really want to reflect on today with you, but just to remind ourselves that this is the first Saturday of the month, and it's also this month that where Our Lady first appeared in Fatima in May, and then she had her last apparition after every month until October. And Our Lady had revealed to Lucia, the great visionary of Fatima, that she wanted this devotion of the first 5 Saturdays, where in 5 months in a row we would honor her, and especially on the first Saturday by certainly going to confession in a spirit of making reparation for the sorrows of her heart and for the afflictions against her heart, and because of blasphemies against her son and against the truth of who she is in her role with the Lord, and so that we would receive communion in a similar spirit of making reparation to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, and also that we would meditate. We will pray a rosary, and then we will meditate for a quarter of an hour on the mysteries of Jesus's life. And then there are great promises and graces that flow, that the Lord promises to give to those who make these this first Saturday devotion. I want to just reflect a little bit today upon the sacrament of confession, but I want to first speak about Our Lady and then lead into that. There's a very important attitude of our heart, you could say, that Our Lady exemplifies of what it is to live as a just soul, as a soul in the right order with God, a soul full of grace. And it's what happens when the sacrament of confession really has its proper effect in our life. It creates this in us, you could say. And this is what I mean is really what the just soul is towards God, and therefore we could understand the effects therefore of sin then upon the soul. So Our Lady is that most perfect heart, the Immaculate Heart. She hasn't sinned, and so that means that she's always turned conversio a Dio. She's always turned towards God. Her heart honors and loves God above all things, and therefore because of that she hates sin. She hates all that distances her from God, and so she's not turned to the creation in a disordered way. She loves the creation, she loves people, she loves with an incredible love, but she doesn't love us or the creation above God. She loves us rather in the right order towards God, or in view of God. And so you see, because she doesn't have sin means that sin turns us away from God. It's a turning of our will and heart away from God. And how do we know that? It's when we turn away from God is that we love sin. We love some action, or we love some pleasure or some act that basically distances us from God, and we therefore turn away from God, and we turn towards these ways of being and living that really convert us into nothingness, you could say, to convert us away from what we should be. And therefore, by nothingness, I mean that deprives us of the fullness of life that we should have. And so when we turn away from God, and we commit these sins, we fall in love with the creation in that way, and then we form habits and vices of tendencies that pull us towards earth rather than freeing our mind and heart towards heavenly contemplation and living in that atmosphere of joy and peace and radiance that is above. And so it's a spiritual struggle to convert the heart, to turn towards God, and to be freed of these disordered loves. Now, thankfully, the good news is that we can ask God for His grace, and already asking God for His grace for these struggles in our life is already grace. And so I want to just reflect with you for a little bit about the sacrament of confession, because sometimes we can have misunderstanding of it. Our Lady had no need for confession because her heart was always turned towards God, and she wasn't disorderly affected to sinful acts or whatever. So so Our Lady had a supple heart. She didn't have a hard heart. You could say she had a perfectly contrite heart all the time. And I just want to speak about contrition as a very important element that we bring to the sacrament of confession for it to be valid, for it to actually take effect in our life. Contrition comes from the Latin word contere, which is to shatter, to break. So when we hear about in scripture about the broken heart, the broken heart that cries out in the Psalms in humility, it's a contrite heart. It's a heart that is shattered from pride, the stiffness of pride, and it's a heart that is humble and therefore turned towards God. And so a contrite heart not only turns towards God, but hates sin and wants to distance oneself from sin. So when we go to confession, it's not just a negative thing, but it's also a positive thing. In other words, for confession to take full effect in our life, it's not just for us to go and say the sins. We must desire not to do those sins again. We must have a will to make an act of will to find sorrow, which is not just beating up yourself of the past, but desiring to not commit that sin again, to eliminate the consequences of that sin, which is what reparation is, which is what penance is. So this is then the sacrament takes effect.